1. Introduction. Friends, if you're in the mood for a film that will make your heart race, your palms sweat, and keep you on the edge of your seat from start to finish, then you absolutely need to know about Fall, the survival thriller that took audiences by surprise in 2022. This movie is not just about danger and heights. It's about fear, friendship, courage, and testing the limits of human endurance. And if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss exciting updates on the latest and greatest movies. In today's video, we're diving deep into everything you need to know about Fall. What is this movie about? Where can you watch it right now? What makes it stand out among other survival thrillers? We'll cover all of this and much more. I'll be sharing with you the full details about the OTT platform where Fall is currently streaming, and also let you know if it's available on any satellite TV channels, so you can plan your movie night accordingly. We'll then move on to the technical side of the film, and trust me, there's a lot to talk about. From the breathtaking cinematography that captures dizzying heights to the sound design that adds intensity to every second, Fall is a masterclass in creating suspense with minimal resources. I'll explain how the pre-production planning helped bring such a high-stakes story to life, how the crew prepared for filming in such an extreme and unique setting, and what kind of visual effects or camera techniques were used to make you feel like you're right there, hanging thousands of feet in the air. Of course, no film is complete without its cast and crew, so we'll take a detailed look at the actors in this movie. Who played which character? How did they prepare for their roles? What were some of the physical and emotional challenges they faced while portraying characters stuck on top of a 2,000-foot-high TV tower in the middle of nowhere? We'll also talk about the director's vision for the film and how the performances bring out the intense emotional core of the story. You'll also get to hear about the movie's budget, how much it cost to make such a visually stunning thriller, and how it performed at the box office. Was it a surprise success? Did it earn more than expected? I'll break down the numbers and talk about the response from both critics and audiences. And yes, we're not stopping there. I'll also share some amazing facts about Fall that many people don't know. For example, did you know that most of the film was shot using real locations rather than green screens? That's right. The actors were actually performing at terrifying heights. You'll learn about the safety measures taken on set, how the filmmakers made the danger feel real without putting anyone at actual risk, and why this movie stands out as one of the most realistic survival thrillers ever made. Lastly, I'll walk you through the storyline, don't worry, no spoilers, and give you a short review based on the pacing, plot, character development, and overall impact. Whether you're a fan of thrillers, survival stories, or just want something intense to watch this weekend, Fall might just be the movie for you. So friends, I request you to watch this video till the end, because there's so much to explore and appreciate about Fall. Let's get started and dive into the thrilling world of this incredible high-altitude adventure. 2. Plot and narrative. Alright friends, get ready because we're about to climb to terrifying heights, literally, as we unravel the jaw-dropping plot of Fall. This is not your average survival story. It's a high-tension, nerve-wracking, emotional roller coaster that starts on the ground but quickly takes you thousands of feet into the air, and leaves you hanging, both physically and emotionally. The movie kicks off with a bang, or should I say, a fall. We're introduced to Becky, an experienced climber, in the middle of a gut-wrenching tragedy. She's climbing with her husband and their best friend, and within minutes, disaster strikes. One misstep, one terrifying slip, and Becky's husband plummets to his death right in front of her eyes. That moment, raw, brutal, and unforgettable, sets the tone for everything that follows. The trauma, the silence, the overwhelming grief. It's heavy. And then we fast forward nearly a year later, where Becky is a shell of herself, drowning in loss and unable to move on. She's stopped climbing, stopped living, and completely disconnected from the world around her. Enter Hunter, Becky's wild, adventurous, thrill-seeking best friend who refuses to let her spiral any further. And how does she help? Oh, just a casual invite to climb a decommissioned 2,000-foot TV tower in the middle of the desert. No big deal, right? According to Hunter, this is the ultimate way for Becky to face her fears, conquer her grief, and feel alive again. And believe it or not, Becky agrees. So begins their death-defying adventure. Now here's where the film really gets its claws into you. The two women make their way up the rusted, creaking tower, and every bolt and rung makes you want to grip your seat tighter. The camera work is so intense you feel like you're climbing right alongside them. The wind howls, the metal groans, and your stomach turns. And just when they reach the very top, boom, the ladder collapses. They're stranded. 2,000 feet in the air. No way down. No cell signal. No help. Just a tiny platform, a backpack, and the harsh, unforgiving sun. From this moment on, the movie stops being about climbing and becomes a fight for survival. Hunger, dehydration, exposure. All the usual survival elements are there, but what sets Fall apart is the way it dives into the emotional core of its characters. You start seeing cracks in the friendship. Secrets come out. Doubts surface. Resentments bubble up. It's not just the tower that's dangerous. It's the tension between the two women, the psychological breakdowns, the moral dilemmas. The isolation starts to mess with their minds, and reality begins to blur. And just when you think you know where it's going, the movie throws a twist. A big, punch-you-in-the-gut kind of twist that makes you rethink everything you've seen so far. This is where the narrative gets bold. It plays with perspective, it plays with assumptions, and it challenges your trust in what's real. It's not exactly non-linear, but it flirts with psychological misdirection in a way that's incredibly effective. You're not just watching them survive. You're questioning what's happening, what's true, and whether both of them will even make it out alive. Every beat of the film ratchets up the tension. From trying to signal for help with a drone, to daring retrieval attempts of dropped equipment, to one character dangling by a single rope. Every scene is crafted to make your heart skip. And through it all, the tower stands tall, like a cruel, silent monster just waiting for them to give up. But they don't. Or at least they try not to. The final stretch of the movie pulls every emotion out of you. Fear, hope, sadness, shock. The tower is more than just a setting. It becomes a symbol of grief, trauma, and resilience. And as we get to the climax, let's just say, the narrative doesn't let you off easy. It's relentless, it's clever, and it sticks with you. So that's the ride. From tragedy to challenge, from a climb to a survival test, from friendship to emotional breakdown. Fall may look like a simple vertical thriller, but its narrative dives deep into the human spirit, pushing its characters, and you, to the very edge. 3. Character development. Alright, let's talk about the real anchors of Fall. And no, I'm not talking about climbing gear. I'm talking about Becky and Hunter, the two women who carry the entire emotional and psychological weight of the film, literally and figuratively. This movie isn't loaded with a huge cast or multiple subplots. It zooms in on just two characters, isolates them on a rickety 2,000-foot tower, and peels back their layers like an emotional onion. And let me tell you, the more the story climbs, the deeper these characters go. Let's start with Becky. When we first meet her, she's shattered. She's not just grieving, she's lost all sense of who she was. The Becky we get in the beginning is a ghost. She's disconnected, broken, and haunted by her husband's death. You can see it in the way she speaks, moves, and shuts out the world. And what's brilliant is that her arc isn't about moving on in the typical movie sense. No cheesy montages, no magical healing moments. Her journey is brutal. It's about confronting raw pain, being forced to look it in the eye, from a height that would terrify anyone, and finding out if she can actually survive, both physically and emotionally. She starts off paralyzed by fear, but inch by inch, she regains control. Not just of the situation but of her own identity. Every terrifying moment on that tower is a step in her transformation from a broken widow to a fighter who refuses to give in. Then there's Hunter, the opposite in so many ways. She's loud, bold, wild, and reckless. At first glance, she seems like the carefree, adrenaline junkie friend who's just trying to snap Becky out of her grief with some extreme therapy. She's got this influencer persona, always vlogging, always chasing the next viral thrill. But don't let the surface fool you. There's a whole world of complexity beneath that fearless exterior. As the story unfolds, you start to see cracks in Hunter's armor. Her motivations become murky. Is she doing this for Becky, or for herself? Is she a true friend, or is there something she's hiding? Spoiler-free, let's just say, Secrets don't stay buried for long when you're stuck on a platform for days with no escape. The dynamic between Becky and Hunter is the heartbeat of the movie. At first, it's this seemingly solid best friend bond, the kind that survived marriages, life changes, everything. But once they're stuck on the tower, with nowhere to run and no distractions, the truth starts to come out. Old tensions resurface. Trust is tested. And suddenly, the tower isn't just dangerous because of the height. It becomes a pressure cooker for every unspoken word and buried emotion between them. It's like a two-person stage play in the sky. And every argument, confession, and breakdown adds new layers to who they are and what they mean to each other. And what makes their character arcs so satisfying is that the growth isn't just about surviving the climb. It's about surviving each other. It's about confronting betrayal, rebuilding trust, and finding clarity when everything else is literally falling apart. By the time you get to the final act, both women have been through a transformation that feels earned, honest, and deeply emotional. Every decision they make, every risk they take, isn't just for survival. It's a reflection of where they are emotionally. Becky learns to take control, to let go of guilt, to rediscover her strength. Hunter, on the other hand, is forced to face the consequences of living life on the edge, both literally and morally. The growth feels real because it's not perfect. They break down. They mess up. They scream, cry, fight, and forgive. It's messy. It's human. And it's powerful. So while Fall may look like a simple survival movie from the outside, it's actually a two-woman character study in disguise. The danger is real, yes, but so is the emotional journey. These aren't just two women stuck on a tower. They're two lives tangled with loss, guilt, courage, and friendship, unfolding against a backdrop of dizzying danger. And watching them evolve as they hang between life and death is what truly makes this movie unforgettable. For performances. Let's get into the performances because honestly, Fall is one of those rare thrillers where the entire film depends on just a couple of actors, and they absolutely deliver. We're not talking about a big ensemble cast here. No flashy cameos or backup characters to share the load. This is a full-on acting tightrope, and the leads are balancing every bit of fear, rage, grief, and desperation with just a rope, a platform, and a camera in their faces. First up, Caroline Currey as Becky. She's the emotional core of this entire story, and wow! Talk about a performance that climbs in intensity along with a tower. From the first scene, Grace draws you in with this quiet, grief-stricken energy. You can see the pain in her eyes without her even saying a word. Her body language alone tells the story of someone who's lost the will to move forward. But what really stands out is how she handles the emotional transformation. Becky doesn't just go from sad to strong overnight. Grace makes you feel every inch of that journey. Her panic attacks feel real. Her screams feel earned. And when she's dangling from the tower, shaking with fear, you're shaking with her. She doesn't overplay the drama, she grounds it. And in a film that relies heavily on close-ups and raw reactions, that kind of control is what keeps you locked in. Then there's Gardner as Hunter. And let me tell you, she is electric. She's got this high-energy, adventurous spirit that lights up the screen the moment she appears. Hunter could have easily been the one-dimensional, fun friend stereotype, but Virginia gives her so much more depth. She's bold, sure, but there's also something frantic under the surface, like she's always running from something, always trying to stay ahead of the crash. And once the tension starts building on the tower, you begin to see all those layers come out. There are moments where she flips from playful to panicked in a split second, and it never feels forced. She brings both charisma and vulnerability to a role that demands so much. Physically, emotionally, and psychologically. What's especially impressive is the chemistry between Grace and Virginia. These two feel like they've been friends for years. There's an ease to their banter, a weight to their silences, and a fire to their arguments. When they clash, it's intense. When they support each other, it's moving. And when their friendship starts to fray under the pressure of the situation, you feel it like a punch to the gut. You're not just watching two people try to survive. You're watching the history of their friendship unfold, shift, and rebuild in real time. And let's not forget, a huge part of their performance isn't in what they say. It's in how they react to fear. This isn't a movie filled with action scenes and dramatic monologues. It's filled with stillness, with wind blowing through hair, with eyes squinting into the sun, with legs trembling on a metal beam. And both actresses completely commit to the physicality of it. You can feel the exhaustion, the dehydration, the sunburn. They sell every second of it so well, you start forgetting you're watching a movie and start worrying they're actually stuck up there. There are a few supporting roles scattered throughout, mostly through flashbacks or brief appearances, but they don't take away from the focus. Instead, they enhance the emotional stakes. The flashbacks with Becky's husband, the voice on the phone, the vlogging audience Hunter performs for, they all exist to deepen our understanding of the main characters, not distract from them. But make no mistake, this is a two-woman show. A full survival thriller running on just 2 performances. And not only do Caroline Currey and Gardner rise to the challenge, they make it look effortless, even while dangling thousands of feet in the air. So if you're looking for performances that go beyond just delivering lines, that dive into raw human emotion while battling the elements, Fall is the kind of film where the acting doesn't just support the story, it is the story. These performances don't just elevate the film. They are the film's foundation. 5. Direction. Let's talk about the real magician behind the curtain, the director of Fall, Scott Mann. If you've ever wanted to know how to stretch 2 characters, 1 tower, and a single setting into nearly 2 hours of pure edge-of-your-seat tension, this is your crash course. Mann doesn't just direct this film. He choreographs it like a high-wire act. From the first frame to the final terrifying moment, you feel like you're right there on the tower with the characters, gripping every rung and praying the wind doesn't pick up. First of all, let's appreciate the tone. This isn't a film that wastes time warming you up with comfort. From the opening scenes, Mann sets a grim, nerve-jangling atmosphere. There's tragedy. There's silence. There's emotional weight. And then, when we start climbing that ridiculous rusted metal tower, everything shifts. The tone becomes suffocating, claustrophobic, despite the giant, open sky. That's the magic of his direction. He turns height into a kind of psychological prison. You're in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by endless space, yet you feel completely trapped. The pacing is genius. You might think, how can a movie about 2 people stuck on a tower keep me entertained for that long? Easy. Because Scott Mann knows exactly when to dial it up and when to let things breathe. He starts with a slow, deliberate build-up. You get time to sit with the characters, to understand their pain and motivations. Then the actual climb, and it's filmed like an action sequence, every step heightening the suspense. And once they're stuck, the pacing doesn't stall. It shifts into survival mode, and every scene becomes a mini crisis. Lost supplies, failed rescue attempts, brutal confessions, and one of the most jaw-dropping twists you're not prepared for. The rhythm keeps changing, just enough to keep your nerves shredded. Now the visuals. Let's talk shot composition. Scott Mann and his team absolutely knew what they were doing when they decided to film this beast. The camera becomes a silent third character, sometimes gliding slowly to emphasize just how high they are, sometimes whipping around to give you vertigo, and sometimes zooming in tight to trap you in their anxiety. There are moments when the camera just hangs over the edge, daring you to look down. And when the sun sets or the storm rolls in, the whole visual tone changes again. The lighting shifts, the mood darkens, and suddenly this tower that once looked like an escape now looks like a tombstone. What's even more impressive is how Mann resists the urge to go over the top with action. He trusts the audience to feel tension without explosions or fancy effects. It's minimalist, but in the most terrifying way possible. The fear comes from real human emotions, grief, guilt, panic, and from grounded, relatable scenarios. You're not watching people outrun monsters or survive some CGI spectacle. You're watching 2 people stuck on a tower trying not to die. And somehow, it's more intense than most big-budget thrillers. One of Mann's boldest choices is how much silence he allows. There's no constant dramatic music forcing you to feel scared. Sometimes there's just the sound of wind, metal creaking, and labored breathing. That restraint makes the danger feel all the more real. And when the music does come in, it lands hard, like a warning siren. And let's not forget about the emotional direction. It's not just a physical thriller. It's a psychological one. Mann guides the performances with a precise hand, letting the friendship between Becky and Hunter evolve naturally. He gives space for breakdowns, for anger, for grief. And just when you think you know these characters, he pulls the rug out. It's not just about how they survive, it's about who they become in the process. And that's all in the directing. Scott Mann took what could have been a gimmick, two girls stuck on a tall thing, and turned it into a cinematic pressure cooker. His choices in pacing, tension, perspective, and emotion are what keep you frozen in your seat. He shapes the film like a carefully calculated climb, and every rung pulls you higher into fear, anxiety, and unexpected emotional weight. This isn't just direction. It's survival storytelling, built to make your palms sweat and your heart race. 6. Cinematography. Let's climb straight into the visual madness of Fall, because the cinematography in this film isn't just about capturing beautiful images. It's the engine behind your anxiety. The entire movie rests on a single towering location, and somehow the camera makes it feel like an endless world of danger, emotion, and nerve-shattering beauty. McGregor, the cinematographer, deserves a gold medal and a parachute for what he pulled off here, because the visuals don't just support the story, they are the story. From the very first wide shot, you know you're in for something different. The way the camera captures scale is stunning. When Becky and Hunter start climbing the 2,000-foot TV tower, you don't just see the height, you feel it in your gut. The camera frequently pulls back to these impossibly high, bird's-eye views that make the characters look like tiny dots in a vertical desert. It's dizzying, disorienting, and totally effective. Every time the frame shows how far they are from the ground, your stomach turns a little. It's not just a movie. It's an experience in acrophobia therapy. And then there are the angles, oh the angles. Low shots looking up at the endless tower, reminding you how far they still have to go. High shots looking straight down, daring you to peek into the abyss. Extreme close-ups that capture every drop of sweat, every blink, every twitch of panic. 1 second the camera is clinging tightly to a character's face, and the next it's whipping around in a full 360-degree spin that makes you feel like you're about to fall off your own couch. It's like the lens itself is on edge the whole time, nervous, jittery, and alive. Lighting plays a massive role too. The shift from bright, blinding sun to eerie twilight is handled so well that it almost becomes a countdown clock. In the beginning, everything is warm and golden. You feel the desert sun baking the tower, and the brightness adds to the sense of exposure. There's nowhere to hide. No shadows. No comfort. But as the sun dips, the colors shift. The sky turns orange, then purple, then deep blue. And once night falls, it's like the tower becomes a haunted ruin. The silhouettes against the stars are haunting, and the isolation feels even more intense. The lighting doesn't just guide the mood. It tells a story of time passing and hope fading. One of the film's most breathtaking visual choices is how stillness is used. You'd think a movie set on a metal tower would be all frantic, fast-paced camera moves. But no. Sometimes the most terrifying moments are the quietest ones. The camera holds, perfectly still, as a shoe slips or a bag swings. It forces you to watch, to wait, to feel the pressure. That restraint is powerful, and it gives the cinematography an eerie, poetic rhythm. The danger isn't in motion. It's in the stillness that could break at any second. And let's not forget the creative use of space. There's almost no room to move on that tiny platform, but somehow the camera makes the space dynamic. It captures new angles, fresh perspectives, changing moods, all in a place that's basically the size of a dining table. That's what makes the visuals feel so impressive. They never get boring. Even with one location, the cinematography keeps reinventing how we see it. It finds beauty in the barren. It finds tension in the silence. Some of the most visually striking moments. Oh, there are plenty. The long, slow dolly out from the top of the tower that reveals just how far they've come, and how alone they are. The silhouette of Becky clinging to the rusted ladder as lightning flashes across the sky. The extreme close-up of her bloodied fingers as she holds on for dear life. The flare shooting into the night, lighting up the tower like a signal from another world. Every one of these shots isn't just beautiful, it's emotionally loaded. The cinematography speaks, screams, and sometimes even whispers when the characters are too exhausted to. What makes all of this even more impressive is that so much of it was filmed with practical effects and real locations. That adds another layer of tension because you know those shots weren't faked in a green screen warehouse. You're seeing real fear, real height, real wind, and that realism is baked into every frame. So no matter how high your tolerance for thrills is, the cinematography in Fall is going to grab you by the collar and drag you to the edge. It's bold, it's beautiful, and it knows exactly how to make your heart race without saying a single word. Every frame is a balancing act between terror and awe, and it turns a metal tower in the middle of nowhere into one of the most visually intense landscapes you'll ever see on screen. 7. Editing and pacing. Let's talk about the secret sauce that keeps Fall from collapsing under its own terrifying premise: the editing and pacing. You might think a movie that traps two characters on a single narrow platform would run out of steam fast. But guess what? Doesn't. And that's all thanks to how tightly the film is cut and how cleverly the pace is handled. This isn't one of those thrillers where you check your watch halfway through and wonder if anything is ever going to happen. This is a clockwork mechanism of suspense, and every edit clicks into place like a perfectly timed gear. From the get-go, the editing sets the tone. It wastes no time pulling you into the drama. You get a quick, sharp emotional gut punch at the start, and then we're climbing. The rhythm is smart. It lets the emotional backstory simmer just long enough to matter, then cuts to the physical challenge without lingering too long. The transitions are smooth but purposeful. There are no wasted scenes, no unnecessary flashbacks. Everything shown has weight. When you shift from past to present, from memory to reality, it always lands with impact. The editing never distracts or confuses. It's a silent guide, making sure you never lose track of the stakes. And once the climb begins, oh boy, the pacing grabs you by the throat. The editors know exactly how to stretch a moment without breaking it. That ladder climb is an early masterclass in tension building. The cuts go back and forth between their feet, their hands, the creaking metal, the wind howling, and their terrified faces, each shot making you clench harder. It's not rushed, but it's never slow. It's precise. Like every frame is placed to make your palms sweat a little more. What's especially fun is how the pacing evolves with the character's situation. First it's fast. Climb, struggle, banter, we're moving. But once they get stuck, pace drops. Not in a boring way, but in a suffocating, time-stretching, anxiety-inducing way. It mimics what the characters are going through. Time feels slower. Seconds feel longer. You feel the drag of exhaustion and hopelessness. The editors smartly elongate the tension here, letting scenes breathe when they need to, holding on a stare, a silence, or the deafening whistle of wind to make you feel how long they've been up there. And then, when you think the pace can't stretch anymore, bang. Something happens. Seagull attack. Shocking fall. A terrifying hallucination. And just like that, the pacing spikes. The cuts get quicker. The music kicks in. Your heart races. It's this brilliant roller coaster rhythm that keeps the audience engaged without needing 10 different subplots. The editing knows when to pause and when to punch, and that balance is what makes it so gripping. Even the transitions between day and night are done with finesse. You're never confused about the passage of time. The way scenes dissolve into dusk, how the light fades, how the girl's conditions deteriorate bit by bit. It all flows naturally. The visual and emotional storytelling go hand in hand here. There's even a moment where you're not sure if what you're seeing is real, and the editing plays with that too. Reality blurs just enough to make you second guess. The film lets those moments linger just long enough to mess with your head, then snaps back to focus when it's time for action. And you know what else the editing does beautifully? It respects silence. Not every movie has the guts to let the air hang in a scene, but Fall does. When there's no dialogue, no dramatic music, just wind, breath, creaking metal, those are the moments that stick with you. And the editors lean into that. They hold on those shots, They trust the tension to live in stillness. And that's not easy to pull off. Takes confidence and skill. So whether it's a rapid cut during a desperate scramble down the pole, or a lingering frame on a tear-streaked face lit by the glow of a dead phone screen, the editing in Fall knows exactly what it's doing. It's not flashy, but it's razor-sharp. It keeps the movie tight, the tension high, and the emotional current constantly flowing. You're not just watching a movie. You're riding a wave of perfectly timed edits and suspenseful pauses that make every second count. Soundtrack and score. Let's talk about the heartbeat of Fall that you might not even realize is working overtime while you're too busy clutching your seat. The soundtrack and score. This film doesn't blast you with constant music or try to manipulate your emotions with a generic action movie beat. No, the sound design here is much smarter, sneakier, and way more effective. It tiptoes into your subconscious, gradually turning up the pressure until you don't even know why your chest feels tight or your breathing's gone shallow. That's the magic. The score is invisible, but it's in total control. The composer, Tim Despic, doesn't flood the film with wall-to-wall sound. Instead, he treats music like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. It's used surgically, coming in exactly when the tension needs to be cranked up, then vanishing when the silence can do a better job. And oh boy, the silence in this movie. It's not empty. It's weaponized. You'll find yourself on the edge of your seat not because of what you hear, but because of what you don't. No music, just the whistle of the wind, the groan of metal, the buzz of static. It's unnerving in the best way possible. And that's intentional. When the music goes quiet, the danger gets loud. When the score does make an appearance, it creeps in like a shadow. There's this subtle humming tension that starts low, almost like it's echoing the character's heartbeat, and as the stakes rise, so does the music. But it never screams. Never takes over. It's more like a pulse, always there, always syncing with the character's panic, grief, or brief flickers of hope. And the beauty of it is that it evolves. In the early parts of the film, when there's still a sense of adventure, the music feels distant, curious. But once they're stranded, the tone shifts. It becomes more ambient, more fragmented, like a musical reflection of their isolation and fear. There are moments in Fall where the score becomes the only friend the characters, and you have. It whispers along as they argue, confess, break down. It pulses quietly when one of them makes a desperate decision. And sometimes it just waits, patiently, for a fall, a slip, a scream. It's the audio equivalent of holding your breath. No big violins. No crashing drums. Just atmosphere. Just dread. One standout moment is how the score ramps up during moments of sheer desperation. When a character tries something daring, or the situation takes a sudden nosedive, the music kicks into high gear. But it's not chaotic. It's rhythmic, measured, like the sound of time running out. These intense surges are rare, which makes them hit 10 times harder. They're not just noise, they're emotional punches. And when the music finally explodes, you feel it, because you've been marinating in silence and subtle tones for so long that your nerves are already frayed. There aren't really recurring themes in the traditional sense. No big heroic motifs or sad piano refrains. What Fall does instead is use texture and repetition. Certain sounds reappear, subtly altered. A rising tone. A dissonant drone. A bass thump that mimics a heartbeat. You don't notice them at first, but by the end of the movie, they've drilled into your brain. They carry emotional memory. They remind you of earlier scenes, earlier fears. They connect the character's psychological journey without saying a word. And then, there's the interplay between the music and the natural sounds. That's where the real brilliance shines. Sometimes it's hard to tell where the score ends and the environment begins. A low rumble of thunder blends into the music. The metallic creak of the tower becomes part of the rhythm. A gust of wind feels like a note in a horror track. The lines blur, and suddenly the world itself feels like it's humming with menace. That fusion of sound design and score is what keeps the film immersive. You're not just watching from a distance. You're up there with them, and the sound is pulling you into the void. So while Fall may look like a simple survival thriller, its soundtrack and score are anything but basic. They're layered, restrained, and deeply tied to the emotional core of the film. It's not about melodies you'll hum afterward. It's about sounds you'll feel lingering in your bones. Whether it's silence that screams louder than any orchestra, or music that creeps under your skin, the audio landscape of this movie is a crucial character in its own right. 9. Themes and messages. Alright, let's dig beneath the surface of Fall and uncover what this towering thriller is really trying to say. Beyond the obvious, don't climb a giant metal tower if you're scared of heights. On the surface, it's a pure adrenaline ride, but if you pay attention, the film's got some interesting ideas hanging just beneath that dizzying drop. One of the biggest themes swirling around Fall is resilience. Not just the physical kind, but the emotional and mental grit that gets you through the impossible. Becky and Hunter are both broken in different ways. Scars from the past, wounds that haven't healed. And this climb becomes a metaphor for facing those internal monsters. It's not just about reaching the ground safely. It's about climbing out of their own darkness. Every rung they struggle to hold onto is like a moment of fighting back against fear, regret, and loss. The tower isn't just steel and bolts. It's a symbol of their personal battles. Another big theme is isolation. The film traps its characters in a tiny world suspended thousands of feet above everything. They're alone, cut off from the rest of the world, forced to rely on each other. That isolation amplifies every emotion: fear, hope, anger, love. And the film uses it to explore how humans behave when stripped down to the bare essentials. It's a raw look at vulnerability and connection. Hunter and Becky's relationship isn't perfect. They argue, they clash. But in this extreme environment, their bond becomes their lifeline. It's about how even when you feel completely alone, human connection can save you. There's also a subtle but powerful message about recklessness and consequences. Becky's decision to climb the tower comes from a place of grief and desperation, and it's a reminder that sometimes we make choices without fully thinking about the cost. The film doesn't judge her for it. In fact, it understands her pain, but it shows the brutal reality of what can happen when thrill-seeking or emotional pain push us into dangerous territory. It's a cautionary tale wrapped in a survival story. Fear itself is almost a character in Fall. The film doesn't just use fear to scare you. It dissects it. What does fear do to the mind and body? How does it twist thoughts, distort reality, and sap strength? There are moments where the characters are paralyzed by fear, and other times where they harness it to find strength. The movie explores that duality, fear as enemy and as fuel. It's a fascinating dive into the psychology of panic and courage. There's also an undercurrent of acceptance. Accepting what's happened, accepting what can't be changed, and accepting yourself. The characters aren't superheroes. They're flawed, scared, and vulnerable, but that makes their journey more real. The film whispers that survival isn't just about fighting the external threats, but making peace with internal demons. It's a quiet message buried in the tension. And just when you think it's all doom and gloom, Fall sneaks in a bit of hope. It's not flashy or preachy. It's subtle, like a flicker of light in a dark place. The film hints that no matter how high the fall or how deep the fear, there's always a chance to climb back up, or at least find peace trying. That message lingers long after the credits roll. So, in the end, Fall is more than just a high-altitude thriller. It's a story about survival in every sense: physical, emotional, psychological, and the many ways we hold on, let go, and fight through the things that try to break us. The themes might be wrapped in sweat and steel, but they strike a surprisingly human chord, making this dizzying story about more than just heights. 10. Visual effects and CGI. Now, when you hear about a movie like Fall that's all about being stranded on a giant, death-defying tower hundreds of feet in the air, your mind probably jumps straight to questions about how they pulled off those dizzying shots without giving the cast a collective panic attack. Well, this is where the visual effects and CGI quietly step in, doing their job so well that you almost forget you're watching a crafted illusion rather than an actual nightmare climb. The film strikes a clever balance between practical effects and CGI, and that balance is what makes it feel so real. The practical effects come through especially strong in the close-up shots, the sweaty palms gripping the metal, the subtle shudders of the characters as the wind blasts by, the texture of rust and grime on the tower's rungs. These tangible details ground the movie, making you believe that these actresses are truly hanging on for dear life. You feel every scrape, every wobble, every shaky breath. The practical effects keep the experience tactile and immediate, pulling you closer to the character's peril. Then, when the camera pulls back to reveal the sheer dizzying height, the endless drop, and the vast sky around them, that's where the CGI works its magic. The digital effects here are slick, but they don't call attention to themselves. There are no over-the-top explosions or flashy graphics trying to steal the spotlight. Instead, the CGI is subtle, almost invisible, creating the vast, vertigo-inducing environment that the practical sets can't physically deliver. The drop looks endless and terrifying without feeling fake or cartoonish. The clouds, the horizon, the tiny cars and buildings far below all blend seamlessly with the real elements on set, making the danger feel very real and very close. What's impressive is how the visual effects team managed to keep the tension alive without letting the CGI become a distraction. The moments when the tower creaks or the metal beams sway are enhanced by visual effects that add an extra layer of unpredictability. You can almost hear the metal moaning under pressure, and your eyes follow every subtle movement. The effects don't just serve spectacle, they serve suspense. They make you squirm, make you lean forward in your seat, make you imagine what it would feel like to be up there in that unforgiving wind. Another cool thing about the effects is how they help sell the physical challenges the characters face. The scenes where one character slips or dangles by a thread are nerve-wracking because you believe they could fall at any second. The digital effects create a sense of vertigo and danger that practical stunts alone couldn't capture safely. Yet they never cross the line into making the risk feel fake. You're always aware that the danger is very real, even if you know it's a movie. Even the small details, like dust blowing off the tower, bits of rust flaking away, the shimmering heat haze in the distance, all get a digital polish that adds to the movie's gritty realism. These touches might be easy to miss on a casual watch, but they work hard to build the world around the characters without crowding the frame or overwhelming the story. In sum, the visual effects and CGI in Fall aren't flashy showboats hogging the screen. They're the quiet assistants that help craft an immersive, believable world where every inch of that terrifying tower feels like it could be the last step. The blend of practical and digital effects creates a seamless, edge-of-your-seat experience that keeps you hooked not because of dazzling visuals, but because the danger feels tangible and real. So when you're watching and feeling your stomach drop with every shaky move, just know that the magic behind the scenes is working overtime to make that fear hit home without ever breaking the spell. 11. Set design and locations. Let's talk about where all the heart-stopping action of Fall takes place. That massive skeletal metal tower looming high above the ground. The set design and location choices here are absolute stars of the show because they turn what could have been a simple backdrop into a living, breathing character in its own right. The tower isn't just a prop or a location. It's the battleground, the prison, the mountain they have to conquer, and the monster that's always ready to throw them down. From the get-go, the design of the tower feels raw and industrial. Rusty metal beams, creaky ladders, tangled cables, and sharp edges that look ready to tear a hand off at the slightest slip. The production team nailed that worn, weather-beaten look that makes the tower feel both abandoned and deadly. You get this sense that the tower has been left to the elements for years, and that adds layers of danger. It's not just high up, it's unstable, unpredictable, and hostile. That feeling seeps into every frame, making the setting itself a source of tension. The cramped spaces on the tower create a claustrophobic vibe despite being in the open air hundreds of feet above the ground. The narrow platforms, rickety ladders, and tight corners force the characters to move carefully and deliberately. This tightness adds to the suspense because it limits their options, making every decision about where to step or hold onto critical. The set design brilliantly makes you feel the vertigo and the vulnerability that come with being trapped on this thin thread of metal. Location-wise, the use of wide, open skies and distant horizons contrasts beautifully with the confined spaces on the tower. Shots that pull back to reveal the dizzying height remind you just how far they are from safety, tiny figures surrounded by vast emptiness. The locations around the base of the tower, with sprawling wilderness and nothing but open land, add to the feeling of isolation. There's no rescue team lurking nearby, no quick escape. It's just them and the endless drop. The choice to keep the environment natural and minimal outside the tower works in the film's favor, making the tower feel even more out of place and dangerous. It's like a giant metal scar on the landscape, an unnatural challenge thrust into the wilderness, and that contrast highlights the character's fragility against this monstrous structure. The props also get some love here. Every piece of gear, the ropes, harnesses, carabiners, backpacks, feels authentic and functional. The character's equipment looks like what real climbers would use, and that attention to detail helps sell the authenticity of their struggle. When a piece of gear fails or a rope frays, it's not just a plot device. It feels like a real, terrifying possibility. That makes the stakes higher and the danger more believable. Even the wear and tear on the characters' clothes, their dirt-smudged faces, and the sweat that glistens under the harsh sun all speak to the grueling environment they're battling. The set design doesn't just create a background, it immerses you in the physical and emotional toll this climb takes on them. In short, the set design and locations of Fall are more than just scenery. They shape the entire mood and feel of the movie. The tower's rusty, towering frame looms like a silent antagonist, its every bolt and beam a reminder of the razor-thin margin between survival and disaster. The production's meticulous attention to detail, combined with the natural isolation of the locations, crafts a visually compelling and terrifying world that pulls you into the heart-pounding nightmare these characters must endure. 12. Dialogue and script. Now, when it comes to a movie like Fall, where the characters are stuck on a towering metal giant with death lurking beneath every step, you might expect the dialogue to be either super dramatic or painfully cliché, maybe endless lines of "hold on" and "we can make it." But surprisingly, the script manages to keep things refreshingly natural and engaging, with moments that feel real and grounded rather than forced or overly theatrical. The conversations between Becky and Hunter feel like two people who have history, baggage, and the kind of rough familiarity that comes from years of ups and downs. They argue, they vent, they joke in between gasps for breath. All of it feels honest and relatable, which is a big win when you're watching characters literally hanging by a thread. The script doesn't waste time with overly complicated exposition or forced backstory dumps. Instead, it reveals their personalities and past pain through quick exchanges and emotional beats sprinkled naturally throughout their interactions. You learn about their struggles, regrets, and motivations not through long monologues, but through how they speak to each other under pressure. The snarky remarks, the moments of tenderness, the frustration boiling to the surface. This keeps the tension high and the dialogue flowing smoothly, which is crucial when much of the movie is basically two people stuck in a tight space. There are moments of sharp wit that cut through the tension just when you need it most. These lines aren't just for laughs. They serve as emotional lifelines, showing how humor can be a coping mechanism even in the face of near-certain doom. Hunter and Becky trade barbs that reveal their resilience and humanity. It's their way of saying, "I'm scared but I'm still here and I'm still me." These quips feel earned and help balance the heavier emotional moments. Speaking of emotional weight, the script shines when it lets the characters get vulnerable. Some of the quieter, softer lines hit harder than any scream or shout because they peel back the layers of who Becky and Hunter really are, their fears, hopes, and regrets. The writing allows these moments to breathe, giving you a glimpse into their souls amid the chaos. These heartfelt exchanges make the characters more than just survivors. They become people you care about. The script is smart enough not to overdo it, so the emotional punches land without feeling manipulative. There are also some standout lines that stick with you, not because they're flashy or poetic, but because they capture the raw reality of the situation. Simple truths spoken in the heat of the moment, about fear, hope, and holding on, feel authentic and memorable. These lines become anchors in the story, reminders of what's at stake and what it really means to survive. Overall, the script in Fall uses dialogue like a tightrope walker uses balance, carefully, with purpose, and with just the right amount of flair. It keeps you hooked by making the characters feel real and relatable, their exchanges sharp and true, and their moments of vulnerability genuine and impactful. In a movie where the visuals scream danger, the dialogue whispers the human story underneath, giving you a reason to root for them beyond the thrills. 13. Genre execution. Fall proudly wears the survival thriller badge, But it's far from your typical trapped in a deadly place flick that just piles on clichés. It knows the rules of the genre well. Tight spaces, high stakes, ticking clocks. But instead of just rehashing old tricks, it adds a fresh twist by putting the characters in a setting so visually terrifying that it becomes almost a character itself. The film doesn't waste time with complicated plots or subplots. It strips the story down to its raw essentials. Two people, a monstrous tower, and a fight for survival. That simplicity lets the tension breathe and keeps the suspense razor-sharp. The action in Fall isn't about big explosions or car chases. It's about the heart-pounding, inch-by-inch struggle against gravity and fear. The movie executes this with such precision that every move feels calculated and every slip could be fatal. This focus on small, high-stakes moments over flashy spectacle is a smart way to shake up the survival genre. It's less about brute force and more about nerve, skill, and mental grit, which isn't something you see every day in thrillers that often rely on non-stop chaos. Suspense is the lifeblood of this film, and it nails it by playing with what you don't see just as much as what you do. The open sky and endless drop create a terrifying canvas for anxiety, but the real thrills come from what's happening on that metal skeleton. Each creak, each gust of wind, each shaky step feels like it might send the characters plummeting. The movie knows how to build tension slowly, layering moments of quiet dread with sudden jolts that keep you on edge without exhausting you. It's a masterclass in pacing suspense. What's really interesting is how Fall sneaks in moments of humor and human connection amid the tension. Survival thrillers can sometimes get bogged down in grim seriousness, but this film balances the drama with light banter and moments of vulnerability that remind you these aren't just characters. They're people. The humor isn't forced or out of place. It's a natural response to fear and a clever way to keep the story grounded and relatable. It's like a breath of fresh air between the suffocating fear, making the highs and lows hit harder. The drama in Fall is quietly powerful. It doesn't shout its emotional beats but lets them simmer underneath the surface, making the moments when the characters open up feel earned and real. That emotional undercurrent adds depth to what could have been a purely adrenaline-driven movie. It's the kind of drama that makes you care about the people on screen, not just the danger they face. And then there's the way the film toys with expectations. You might think you know where it's going, but Fall twists the survival formula just enough to keep you guessing. It's not about miraculous last-minute rescues or convenient plot devices. It's about grit, mistakes, and the messy reality of survival. That grounded approach is refreshing and makes the film feel both thrilling and honest. So, Fall delivers a survival thriller that respects its genre's traditions while adding new layers of tension, emotion, and character depth. It's a movie that knows how to scare you, make you laugh, and keep you invested without resorting to tired tropes. The result is a gripping ride that feels both familiar and fresh, just the right kind of terrifying. 14. Social and cultural commentary. At first glance, Fall might seem like just a white-knuckle survival thriller focused on two people dangling hundreds of feet in the air, but if you dig a little deeper, you'll notice some subtle but intriguing social and cultural threads woven through the tension and terror. The film doesn't hit you over the head with political statements or preachy messages. Instead, it slips these ideas in quietly, letting the story do the talking while inviting you to think beyond the immediate danger. One of the strongest undercurrents in the film is the theme of resilience in the face of isolation and adversity. In a world that's increasingly connected yet often leaves people feeling cut off or overwhelmed, Fall zooms in on what it means to face life's terrifying challenges mostly alone, or with only one other person to rely on. It touches on the human need for connection, trust, and teamwork when the chips are down, which feels very relevant in today's fast-paced, often fragmented society. The character's struggle isn't just physical. It's emotional and social too, showing how survival is as much about mental strength and relationships as it is about skill or luck. The film also gently explores the idea of confronting fears head-on rather than running away from them, which can be seen as a metaphor for broader social anxieties many face today. Climbing that terrifying tower is like climbing the invisible walls we all have in our minds, whether it's fear of failure, loss, or the unknown. The movie makes you think about how people deal with their personal high places that seem impossible to overcome, and it does so without getting heavy-handed. It's woven into the characters' journeys in a way that feels natural and relatable, not forced. Another subtle layer is the portrayal of gender dynamics and empowerment. With two women at the center, battling both external dangers and internal doubts, Fall flips some traditional survival tropes on their head. It's refreshing to see female characters who are tough, resourceful, and emotionally complex without falling into stereotypes or clichés. Their story challenges the usual Hollywood norms and adds a contemporary flavor that speaks to shifting cultural conversations about strength, independence, and partnership. The movie doesn't dive into heavy politics, but there's a quiet nod to environmental themes too. The vast, empty landscapes around the tower remind you of humanity's fragile place in the natural world, and the looming metal structure feels like a symbol of man-made challenges that can both awe and endanger us. It's a small, almost subconscious reminder that the environments we create and inhabit carry risks that we sometimes underestimate. What's impressive is how all these themes and messages are blended seamlessly into the story without disrupting the flow or feeling like an after-school special. They're tucked under the surface, giving you plenty to chew on if you want, while still letting the film deliver its pulse-pounding thrills. The social and cultural commentary feels like a layer of thoughtful seasoning rather than the main course, adding flavor and depth without overpowering the story's core adrenaline rush. So, while Fall keeps you gripping your seat with its physical dangers, it also invites you to reflect on bigger ideas about fear, connection, empowerment, and our place in the world. It's a thriller that entertains with a punch but also lingers in your mind with subtle, relevant reflections on today's culture and human experience. 15. Audience engagement. Fall is one of those movies that grabs you from the very first frame and doesn't let go until the very last second. The emotional roller coaster it takes you on is expertly crafted to pull at your nerves, your heartstrings, and sometimes even your funny bone. You're not just a passive viewer here. The film makes you feel like you're right there on that towering metal nightmare, your palms sweating, your breath catching, and your heart pounding with every precarious step the characters take. There are moments that make you want to cheer, moments that make your stomach flip, and yes, even moments that sneak in a little laughter to break the tension. The humor isn't cheesy or out of place. It's the kind of sharp, witty banter that feels like a real human reaction to an impossible situation. These bursts of levity help the film connect on a deeper emotional level because they remind you that even in the scariest moments, there's still room for hope and humanity. That balance keeps the audience emotionally invested and makes the scary parts hit even harder. But the film isn't just about thrills. It's about the emotional journey of the characters, and that journey resonates long after the credits roll. You find yourself rooting for Becky and Hunter not just because you want them to survive, but because you care about who they are and what they've been through. Their vulnerabilities, their fears, and their small victories all become your victories, and that emotional connection makes the suspense more intense and the story more memorable. Fall also invites you to think, to question, and to reflect. What would you do in their shoes? How would you face your own fears? These questions linger, making the film stick in your mind and sparking conversations long after you've left the theater or turned off the screen. It's the kind of movie that fans love to dissect, talking through every nail-biting moment, every near miss, and every emotional beat. That engagement doesn't just make it a one-time thrill. It makes it a story you want to revisit and share with others. The pacing of the movie also keeps your adrenaline flowing in just the right way. It doesn't rush through the drama or the action, letting tension build naturally and keeping you on the edge of your seat without wearing you out. This careful rhythm keeps the audience hooked and emotionally charged from start to finish. In essence, Fall doesn't just entertain. It emotionally hooks you, challenges you, and stays with you. It's the kind of film that sparks strong reactions, invites heartfelt discussions, and makes you want to watch it again, just to feel that rush all over again and to catch every detail you might have missed the first time around. It's an emotional and thrilling ride that's designed to pull you in completely and keep you invested until the very last frame. 16. Comparisons to similar films. When you put Fall side by side with other survival thrillers, it immediately carves out its own niche while still tipping its hat to some classics in the genre. If you think about films like 127 Hours or The Towering Inferno, Fall shares that intense, trapped in a dangerous spot vibe, but it brings something fresh to the table by taking the peril vertical. Way vertical. Instead of being trapped underground or in a building on fire, these characters are dangling hundreds of feet up a skeletal metal tower, which cranks the tension up a notch because the open air isn't freedom here. It's just another layer of terrifying risk. Unlike some survival thrillers that pile on external threats like wild animals, harsh weather, or hostile villains, Fall zeroes in on the pure physical and psychological challenge of height and instability. That focus is part of what sets it apart. The suspense is generated not by external chaos but by the precarious environment itself and the character's own fears and resourcefulness. It's almost a minimalist thriller in that sense, stripped down to the essentials but packed with heart-pounding moments. Comparing it to the director's previous works, Fall feels like a leap in terms of how it handles tension and atmosphere. There's a clear evolution in the way the film blends breathtaking visuals with intimate character drama. The director's style here is less about flashy camera tricks and more about immersive storytelling through environment and performance, which makes the film feel both grounded and cinematic. It's a reminder that sometimes less is more when it comes to thrills. The movie also stands out by centering on two strong female leads in a genre often dominated by lone male survivors or ensemble casts. This gives Fall a fresh dynamic, emphasizing partnership, trust, and emotional complexity rather than just rugged individualism. It adds a layer of emotional depth that some similar films don't always explore, making the survival story feel more nuanced and relatable. In terms of pacing and structure, Fall doesn't reinvent the wheel. It follows a familiar tension-building arc where the stakes keep rising as the characters try to find their way out of danger. But it executes this classic formula with precision and creativity. The set pieces, especially the climbs and slips on the tower, feel fresh and inventive, like a vertical dance with death that keeps you guessing how they'll make it through the next moment. If you're a fan of edge-of-your-seat survival stories but are tired of the usual settings and clichés, Fall offers a breath of fresh air. It takes familiar genre elements and rearranges them in a way that feels both new and satisfying. The film's blend of physical danger, emotional stakes, and stunning visuals makes it stand tall, quite literally, among its peers. It's the kind of survival thriller that respects the classics but isn't afraid to climb higher and push the limits of what keeps you glued to the screen. 17. Symbolism and metaphors. Fall is not just a heart-pounding survival thriller stuck on a towering metal skeleton. It's a visual and emotional playground full of symbolism and metaphors that sneak up on you as you get deeper into the story. The towering structure itself isn't just a terrifying obstacle. It's a giant metaphor for the personal and psychological mountains the characters must climb. Every precarious step they take is like navigating the delicate balance of fear, trauma, and hope. The tower's dizzying height and exposed nature symbolize how vulnerable and exposed the characters feel inside, not just physically but emotionally. The endless sky surrounding the tower can be read as both freedom and doom. It's this vast, open space that contrasts starkly with the confined, narrow metal beams the characters cling to. That contrast perfectly mirrors the tension between wanting to break free from past mistakes, regrets, and fears and feeling trapped by them. The sky offers escape, but the fall reminds us how dangerous that freedom can be. It's the ultimate push and pull, visually reinforcing the character's internal struggles with letting go or holding on. The metal structure itself, cold and unyielding, represents the harsh realities life throws at us, immovable, unfeeling, and sometimes threatening. But at the same time, it's a pathway, a ladder to something beyond, suggesting that the very things that trap us might also be what help us grow if we dare to climb them. It's a powerful symbol of resilience. No matter how dangerous or rigid the climb, moving forward is the only option. Throughout the film, the characters' interactions with the tower also serve as metaphors for control and chaos. The steady, calculated movements required to ascend contrast with the unpredictable dangers of wind, loose bolts, and the constant threat of a misstep. This mirrors how life demands careful planning but is always subject to sudden disruptions, reminding us that survival is as much about adaptability as it is about strength. There's also a recurring motif of light and shadow. The way sunlight streams through the tower's beams creates patterns that flicker and shift, symbolizing hope breaking through fear, clarity piercing confusion, and moments of insight amid struggle. Shadows play tricks on the characters' minds, just as doubts and fears cloud their judgment, reinforcing the idea that what we see isn't always the full truth. Even the characters' gear, the ropes, harnesses, and tools, act as metaphors. They represent trust and reliance, not just on equipment but on each other and oneself. When a rope frays or a tool slips, it's a visual cue for the fragility of trust and the thin line between security and disaster. Their safety depends on these connections, much like in relationships and life. The film's use of silence versus sound is another metaphorical layer. Moments of eerie silence amplify isolation and vulnerability, while sudden noises, creaks, winds, shouts, remind us of life's unpredictability and the constant tension between calm and chaos. All these symbolic layers elevate Fall from a simple thriller to a textured story about human fragility, courage, and the thin threads that hold us up, both literally and metaphorically. They make the film more than just a fight for survival. They turn it into a visual poem about what it means to face your fears and keep climbing no matter how high or how scary the path ahead might be. 18. Franchise or historical context. Fall isn't part of a franchise or a sequel, so it's standing tall all on its own as a fresh, original survival thriller. That independence gives it a unique kind of freedom. No baggage from previous films, no expectations from a broader saga. Just a pure, self-contained story that grabs you and doesn't let go. In a world saturated with franchises, reboots, and endless sequels, Fall is a bold reminder that a simple, well-told tale can still shine brightly on its own. It's like a breath of fresh air that's unapologetically focused on delivering a tight, tense experience without trying to set up a cinematic universe or tease the next chapter. Without the need to link into a larger series, the movie zeroes in on creating a singular, immersive experience that is both intimate and epic in scale. The tower might as well be a character in its own right, and the story doesn't lean on any backstory outside the immediate survival challenge. This laser focus lets the film explore the themes of fear, resilience, and human connection without distractions. It's a pure adrenaline and emotion cocktail that stands alone and doesn't rely on franchise fan service or callbacks. Even though it's not a historical film, Fall feels grounded in a very real kind of danger that anyone who's afraid of heights can instantly relate to. It taps into a universal fear of falling in isolation that has been part of human storytelling forever, like modern myth-making, using contemporary technology and settings. In that sense, it connects to the long tradition of survival stories that have captivated audiences through history, but it gives it a modern twist with a towering metal skeleton that feels like a symbol of today's man-made challenges. Because it doesn't have to worry about fitting into a timeline or a universe, the film can experiment with pacing, mood, and character development without the pressure to set up sequels or tie into other plots. That gives it an honesty and immediacy that some franchise films can struggle to maintain when juggling bigger story arcs. In the context of the current movie landscape, Fall reminds us that original standalone thrillers can still pack a punch and create memorable cinematic moments. It shows that sometimes, the best way to leave a mark isn't by adding more layers or stories, but by making the one you're telling as gripping and intense as possible. So while Fall may not be part of a franchise or rooted in history, it earns its place as a sharp, self-contained thrill ride that doesn't need a series or historical backdrop to keep you hooked. It stands tall all on its own, just like the tower at its center. 19. Budget and box office. Let's talk money because in the world of thrillers, how much cash goes into the film often shapes what kind of spectacle you get, and Fall is a perfect example of that fascinating dance between budget and blockbuster potential. The movie's budget wasn't sky-high like some massive superhero flick, but it was just enough to create a believable, jaw-dropping setting that feels incredibly real and nerve-wracking. That tower, with its dizzying heights and claustrophobic metal beams, looks stunning and terrifying, proving that smart spending and clever design can create huge tension without needing a pile of CGI or flashy effects. The production quality shines through in every frame, showing that sometimes precision and focus trump over-the-top budgets. Because the film didn't have a blockbuster's wallet, the filmmakers had to get creative, using practical effects, real stunts, and tight camera work to build suspense. This worked brilliantly to immerse the audience, making the danger feel immediate and tangible. The budget might have been modest, but the impact feels anything but small. It's a classic example of quality over quantity, spending wisely where it counts to make sure every penny adds to the adrenaline rush. When it comes to box office performance, Fall had a bit of a tricky climb, much like its characters. It didn't open with massive hype or a flood of marketing dollars, but word of mouth and the pure thrill factor helped it find its audience. Sometimes smaller movies like this rely on people discovering them organically, and Fall slowly built momentum as viewers shared their edge-of-the-seat experiences. It's one of those films that might not have smashed records on opening weekend, but carved out a loyal fanbase who appreciated the heart-pounding suspense and relatable characters. Marketing played a smart game by focusing on the film's unique premise, the terrifying height and survival scenario, which stood out in a crowded marketplace. The trailers and posters highlighted the vertigo-inducing stunts and emotional stakes, drawing in thrill seekers and fans of survival dramas alike. This targeted approach helped stretch the marketing budget further and connect with the right crowd without trying to appeal to everyone at once. Audience reception also played a key role in its box office journey. Those who saw the film often recommended it for its gripping tension and emotional depth, creating a steady buzz that kept people coming. It's the kind of movie that benefits from passionate fans who love to talk about every close call and clever escape, turning a modest-budget film into a memorable experience that resonates beyond the ticket sales. So, while Fall didn't come with a blockbuster's budget or a record-breaking box office haul, it used its resources smartly to deliver high production quality and build a solid fan base. The film's financial story is a reminder that you don't need to spend a fortune to make a thriller that truly sticks with viewers. And sometimes, the best survival stories are the ones that survive on pure creativity and heart rather than endless dollars. Alright, let's dive deeper into where and how you can watch Fall, because this movie's edge-of-your-seat thrills deserve the best possible setup to fully soak in all the tension and drama. First up, the theatrical experience. If you're lucky enough to catch Fall in a cinema, you're in for something special. The big screen amplifies everything, from the dizzying heights to the subtle creaks of the metal tower, and when that soundtrack hits, the booming speakers wrap around you like the wind howling at those sky-high altitudes. Watching it in a theater feels almost like you're right there with the characters, teetering on those beams and feeling every pulse of adrenaline. The scale of the visuals combined with top-notch sound design makes the movie a full-body experience, the kind that just can't be replicated at home. But we get it, cinema trips aren't always doable for everyone. Maybe you prefer the comfort of home, or you want to watch Fall on your own schedule. Thankfully, the movie is available on multiple streaming platforms, so you can press play whenever the mood strikes. Whether you have subscriptions to popular services or you rent it digitally, streaming lets you enjoy the film without the hassle of traffic, tickets, or showtimes. Plus, watching at home means you can control the environment. Pause if you need a breather, rewind to catch a detail you missed, or even turn on subtitles if you want to catch every line crisply. Streaming is perfect for the cozy thriller night in, where you can dim the lights, grab your favorite snacks, and settle in for a suspenseful journey without interruptions. If you're a collector or someone who loves owning your favorite movies, Fall is also up for digital purchase on platforms where you can add it permanently to your library. This means it's just a click away whenever you want to relive those heart-pounding moments or share the experience with friends and family. Buying digitally is great for repeated viewing, especially for a film like this that rewards close attention to detail. The kind of movie where every creak or shadow could mean the difference between safety and disaster. Now let's talk about the gear, because sound and picture quality can totally change the game. The film's sound design is a masterpiece on its own, with subtle environmental noises like the wind whistling past or the metallic groans of the tower that build tension almost subliminally. Watching Fall with headphones or on a sound system that highlights these nuances makes you feel like you're really suspended hundreds of feet in the air with the characters. The soundscape and the visuals work hand in hand, so investing a little in a good screen and speakers pays off big in immersion. The shadows and lighting shifts on the screen create atmosphere and suspense, and that really comes alive in a darkened room with minimal distractions. If you're planning a watch party, streaming Fall can turn into a great shared experience, especially if you have friends who love thrills. Be ready for moments of collective gasps, nervous laughter, and maybe even a few screams, because the movie is designed to grip you and not let go. Watching together can make the scary parts less daunting and the exciting moments even more electric. Plus, after the film you'll have plenty to talk about, Those crazy stunts, the characters' choices, and how many times you thought someone was going to fall. To sum it up, whether you catch Fall on the grand canvas of a movie theater, stream it comfortably at home, or buy it for repeated viewings, the film offers flexibility without losing any of its gripping intensity. Each option has its perks, but no matter how you watch, make sure you're ready for a thrilling, vertigo-inducing ride that stays with you long after the screen goes dark.